Welcome to Drum Talk. In today's Drum Talk, we're going to talk about my restoration of a Camco, I believe it's 1960s bass drum pedal. And by restoration, I mean this pedal, when I got it, was a working pedal. But if you've played an old pedal, you know that they don't really feel the same as the newer, more modern pedals. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of this pedal, and we'll start at the beginning and we'll go all the way to where we've gotten to today, and some of the offshoots of the pedal, so you can see the history of the bass drum pedal that is a classic. This is the Camco strap drive bass drum pedal, and I'm going to talk about how I've rebuilt it and a little bit of the history of it. Now, my good friend Alan Levine gave me this pedal probably close to 7, 8, 10 years ago. And when he gave it to me, it sat on my shelf. He was like, here, have an extra pedal. And it just sat there. And then one day I was in a band called the Swigs, and we had a drum kit set up where we were rehearsing. Didn't have a pedal, so I brought this pedal with me. And for the longest time, I just played it, and it really didn't feel that bad. I didn't want to keep my working pedal. This is my Camco chain drive after 1983 pedal that I've had for a long time, probably 25, close to 30 years probably I've had this pedal. This pedal is my working pedal. This is the one that normally sits in my gig bag and goes in my track case, and I take out and I use at church today, most gigs, and most of the gigs around town. This is the pedal I go out with. So I've had a couple of these. This is my second one. I don't know when exactly I picked it up. It was somewhere around the 90s. But when I did pick it up, it stayed with me for a long time. I think I paid it brand new $63. I remember the price, kind of. And it's the exact design of the Camco pedal. Okay? Except this is the Camco by Tama pedal. So let's talk about the history of this pedal and where it goes to right now. So Camco, before the Camco pedal, there was a pedal called the Martin Fleetwood pedal. And I believe Martin Fleetwood had some connection to Camco, because eventually that pedal design got given or sold to the Camco drum company. And Camco's design eventually became the Gretsch floating action pedal. You're actually seeing the same design as the Camco pedal. Now, Camco in the 1950s made only hardware, and by the 1960s started to make drums. And their hardware was famous for this pedal. So the Camco pedal was licensed to Gretsch to be the floating action pedal. And they pretty much looked the same. They had the similar kidney-shaped cam design, the side spring, the tensioning mechanism, the same footboards, except for it said Gretsch floating action. And my first Gretsch floating action pedal I had in 1979 when I traded it to a friend who wanted my Speed King. And I wasn't a big Speed King guy. It made a lot of noise, and I never got any speed out of the Speed King. I never could make it work the way I needed it to work. So I traded it for a Gretsch floating action pedal, which I kept for a while, and then I eventually bought a Tama King Beat pedal. And I talk about this in my drum pedal video that's been on YouTube for about 4 years now. But when I was working with the Swigs, one night I was playing this pedal, and the hinge on the pedal is not this hinge. This is the replacement hinge, and this is the story. This hinge, and I'll show you some pictures of it when I do this video, this hinge was like a piano hinge. And one night I was playing on it, and all of a sudden the piano hinge broke. And the pedal just flopped, and it was broken. I thought, oh, crud, I'm going to have to bring my other pedal. So the next rehearsal I brought my other pedal, but when I brought this home, I said, you know, this looks an awful lot like the DW, because it was an awful lot like the DW, because the Camco die and tool that made the pedals was sold to DW in the 70s. And Drum Workshop bought the pedal design, created a footboard that said DW 5000, and started making the same exact pedals. And it was right at the time Camco went under, DW bought the tool and the die, sold their pedals as DW5000. Tama bought the Camco name, and they started making a pedal named Camco, which didn't look exactly like this, but was around that same design. It had the same design, except for it had a sprocket on it. So the sprocket, this is the interesting part of the story, the sprocket comes into the story in that Elvin Jones, who was playing a lot of gigs in New York City, was at Frank Ippolito's drum shop, Professional Percussion Center, Frank Ippolito's Professional Percussion Center in the 70s. And he went in there and said, I'm having a problem breaking straps on my floating action pedal or my Camco pedal, because I think he had both. And there was a guy inside the shop named Al Duffy. And Al Duffy would go on to work with Pearl and work with Billy Cobham on designing some drums and different things for different Japanese drum companies in the 80s. But Al Duffy was the guy that invented the sprocket. It looked like a bicycle sprocket. He put a bicycle sprocket on this pedal and turned it into a chain drive pedal for Elvin Jones. So when Tama bought the Camco name, Tama took the sprocket and started putting it on a pedal. When DW bought the tooling and die, they decided they're going to put a sprocket on their pedal. And the early DW5000 pedal was, alongside of the Tama Camco pedal, the first two chain drive pedals. We would come to find chain drive pedals everywhere today. Most pedals made today are chain drive. Matter of fact, my Iron Cobra pedal is not a chain drive. Normally you get these chain drive. I actually bought this Iron Cobra pedal in 2004 at Resurrection Drums looking for this pedal, looking for a Gretsch floating action pedal, and I found it. The problem was the Gretsch floating action pedal cost $100, and this pedal in 2004 cost some total of $114. So I bought the $114 Iron Cobra Flexi Glide with the strap because this is a super fast pedal. It's got really good bearings in it. It's got a nice spring to it, but it's the same design as the Camco, Tama Camco, and the Camco original. It all comes back, the same history is here in how we make these pedals. And Iron Cobras are one of the best pedals out there. A lot of guys love the Iron Cobra. I love it in my studio, and it stays in my studio. It just doesn't travel real well with this foot plate. And I'm not the kind of bass drum player playing the kind of gigs where I need that speed all the time. So what I do is I leave this at home for my studio. So when this hinge broke, I said to myself, how can I fix this pedal? Well, I went online to eBay and I looked up DW pedal parts and I found a hinge. And the hinge that's on this pedal fits a DW5000 pedal because the holes line up perfectly. The 4 holes that are on this hinge line up perfectly with the heel plate and the pedal board of this Camco pedal. That was the first change I made in this pedal. The next change I made in this pedal, because it had a nylon strap, was I wanted to go back to a leather strap. Now that was something that, you can actually find DW5000 nylon straps that probably are more durable, but there was something about the feel of my original floating action pedal that I said I wanted that strap drive. So I went and found a strap drive on eBay, and this was a sum total of like $8 for the strap drive. So I bought the strap, I had the hinge, and the other day I was trying to play this pedal and trying to figure out, it fits in the Tama classic hardware bag better than this does, because this has got this sprocket on it. So I thought to myself, how can I fix this pedal up? The next thing was I started looking at bearings. I thought maybe I can change the bearings, but the bearings actually don't sound bad, and they don't seem like they need to be replaced. So changing the bearings seems a little over the top right now. But what I thought was, this spring didn't look real cool. It looked like it was old and decrepit, and I said to myself, let's try a new spring. So I went out and spent $14 on the DW spring that fit this perfectly, put it on, and I'm amazed at the speed I'm getting from this pedal. and it feels really, really nice. So, a couple little improvements to this pedal that cost me nothing to get, which is a vintage pedal, and I've got a now working gigging pedal again. So this is now going to go in my bag for my next church gig, and I'm gonna play with this a little bit. I've been playing with it in the studio this week, and I'm finding it actually works really well. So this design that is common today on the DW 3000 pedal and the 6000 pedal, which without the floorboards, the basically the plate on the bottom. These pedals come from the original Camco floating action pedal design. So if you find one of these pedals, what I'm saying is don't chuck it. There's ways to fix these pedals, and there's parts to fix these pedals even today, over 60 years later. Actually, yeah, it's about 60 years. If this was made in 1960, let's say, it's 60 years old. You could find one that's made 70, 65 years, because Camco's been around since the 50s, making the same design pedal. So all I'm saying is, moral of the story, there are parts for these pedals. Now, this Tama Camco pedal, amazing pedal. I still recommend it today. It works well. The only thing I've had to replace on this was the spring broke one day. One day I broke the spring. So pedals do break parts. I mean, I've already replaced the strap on the Flexi Glide once. So it breaks. So things like straps and chains, they break over time, but in actuality, they can be fixed. And this old pedal feels really nice today since I put the hinge on it and the new spring. By the way, one more thing I want to show you. This is the new Rogers Dynomatic. Is it called Dynomatic? I believe it's called Dynomatic. Rogers, yeah, Swivel-matic, Dynomatic, right. The Rogers Dynomatic beater. And the cool thing about this beater is it's got a spring load on it, and you can actually flip it around. So I bought one of these. They're about 18 bucks. And this is what I usually use on my gigs. So if I want the heavier, flat-sided beater, I go with this side. And if I want to switch it to the, the felt side, it's an easy switch. And it works really well. But Camco pedals, can't go wrong with them. I recommend them highly for guys that are working, need some lighter hardware to travel with. Playing those kind of gigs, you can get away with not having to have double pedals and super fast feet. If you got normal feet, normal type gigs, it works fine. Great pedal. So anyhow, thanks for watching. I hope you learned something about Camco pedals and Martin Fleetwood pedals and Gretsch floating action pedals. And thank you all for watching, man. Have a great day. Bye.